Um, Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode on the art of teaching. This episode is going to be titled, you would have probably seen it, that students are life savers. As a teacher, students have saved my life, and I've been teaching for more than a decade now. I've been heavily invested in that career, and I can't even begin to start to tell you how students are lifesavers. So I think as a perspective, it's very important, because if you understand that it's not only that students benefit from you, but you benefit a lot, massively from students, the way you see teaching itself will transform. It will completely change. So I can think of hundreds, numerous incidents of how students saved my life, but I'll try and give you some perspective. Okay, one good example is when I was about 22, 23 years old, I picked up a habit. And this is not a habit that my parents or my teachers or my advisors, my mentors, especially from not my school, not Kingswood, it's not a habit that I got from my school friends. No, it's a habit that I picked from society. When I left home and I went to the city and I started working and all that, this habit is smoking. So for a few years in my life, I was smoking. I had picked it up. But how does this connect to the idea of students are lifesavers? The idea now, as a teacher, right? As a teacher, as a lecturer, as a trainer, I used to go and the engagement is that you do public conversations, right? You engage in public dissemination of information. So you have classes, you have trainees, you have mentees, and you go and talk to them. So smoking is actually one of the worst things that you can do to yourself, especially as a teacher. Right now, my dad, he hates smoking, and I understand why. What happened? Okay, how this connects to the idea of students saving my life is during a time where if I had the opportunity to smoke 10 cigarettes a day, because of my teaching career, because of my students, because of my need to be well and do well for my students, the number of cigarettes I smoked became 2. On a day I would smoke 20 cigarettes, the number of cigarettes I smoked became 3. Purely because I had lectures, purely because I knew I couldn't go into that class thinking like some, stinking with cigarette smell. It's so bad, and you mix a little sweat with it, it's a done deal. I can't really, because I have very one-on-one engagements and conversations with students. I meet with them, I talk to them, students come to talk to me, I advise them, I support them, I help them. Now, none of these things, I don't want to do them in a situation where the student feels grossed out because of me. Because of that, I severely limited that habit, or else I would probably be in a different place today. So in that sense, even today when I think about that, it's such a bad habit. It's a habit that I'm so ashamed of that I picked up. But I'm also so grateful, so very grateful to my students. Because of them, I was able to limit it, and I was able to control it. I was able to maintain my objectivity around the idea of why should I smoke, and truly understand what my dad and my teachers and my college, my Kingswood taught me about it. And to control it and manage it, and finally come to a point where I have faced it successfully. So yes, that is one great example in my life personally, how students saved my life. That's one. I'll tell you another incident. I used to be a very short-tempered person, and still it's there, right? Especially in the face of unfairness, injustice, lying, deceit, cheating. Now, in the face of these things, I'm very, very short tempered, like short fuse. Goes up, it comes down as fast as that, but I have a short fuse. But after I started teaching, initially, I've said this story also, where in the first series of lectures I did for business mathematics, in the second or the third session, my fuse had gone off, and I was scolding and I was ranting in a lecture, and where a couple of girls in the lecture started crying. I've shared this story. So you see how it happened. And I believe that over the past decade of my life, if my short temper was as it is, if it was as it is, I probably someone would have knocked me out now. Someone would have probably killed me or something like that, or I would have ended up in jail or something like that. Because I mean, in the face of some injustice that happens, God, the anger that you feel, especially even in our country, some of the things that you see, still you see, all the horrendous things that people do to the environment, to animals, to fellow human beings, right? You get mad, you get angry, especially someone as short-tempered as me. You tend to react. But this wasn't Kingswood. This was the society. Society operated slightly differently to how Kingswood, not much, but slightly. And my students, because of my students, I realized in the first year of my career, teaching career itself, I realized I had to manage it. I had to manage, and I had to control, and I had to, actually anger is a very powerful tool. I've talked about it. There's a different episode on how I see anger. It's a very useful tool, but it's all about how you manage it and how you wield it. Because anger can be a weapon, in which case it's very bad, but anger can also be a tool. So very soon after I started professionally engaging myself with enhancing my teaching skills, I realized that I had to manage my anger, and I did it because I wanted to be exemplary for my students. That was the primary motivation. So when in my lectures, when things go wrong, when students don't listen, when students are bothering me or troubling me or becoming a nuisance, none of this is problematic, to be honest. If you can't manage a class today, until this date, I believe that if a teacher cannot manage the class, and if a class is too troublesome for a teacher, it's not the class's fault. It's the teacher's fault. That's how I believe it. Because I have seen unyielding classes. Right? I have managed unyielding classes. I have seen teachers who have managed my class. I'm talking about a class that is impossible. A group of 35 students who are currently among the best human beings on earth, at least in terms of skill. So because I had to temper and manage my anger in my corporate career, in my professional career, in my personal life, in my life with friends, in my daily life, right, on the road, my anger, I was able to cull it, I was able to manage it in such a way that today I'm standing in front of you and I'm talking to you and I'm sharing this idea with you. So students were a primary motivation for me to manage my anger. The fact that I became a teacher and I was teaching and I was sharing my knowledge, and I wanted to aspire to be better for them, and I wanted to be an example for them, and I didn't want to get angry and mad and shout and scream at them all the time. Because of all these reasons, today I have learned how to manage it much better. So my dear students, if you are watching this, I'm very thankful to you. I am. You saved my life. That's one. I remember a very interesting story actually. Back in 2014, we used to go on a lot of trips. I used to organize a lot of trips with students. And me and a gang of my students, we all went on a trip somewhere down south in Sri Lanka. And one thing that you should know is I'm not a great swimmer. Actually, I'm not a good swimmer at all. I'm very weak in my swimming skills. All I can do is barely stay afloat, and that also not for a long time, right? For a few minutes. Because I'm a tall person, relatively tall person. Even when you put me to a 6 feet deep end pool, I manage because my feet touches the ground. Probably because of this advantage, I never pursued to learn swimming properly, and there were time issues also. And when we went on this trip, what happened was there was a very beautiful branch of the probably Wallaby River, very beautiful branch, very beautiful lake, and we just started playing in it. And slowly, it was a stream that was flowing, and slowly, because of my confidence, I'd stepped back and just playing. We were playing a ball, throwing it around, etc. And I had gone past my limit. Suddenly, I couldn't feel the ground, and I could feel myself sinking. Even today, when I remember that day, it brings the chills to my body. In fact, I faced death, literally. I faced death 3 times in my life. This was one of those instances. I'll probably share the other 2 later. And water had flooded into me in my mouth. I was struggling. I was just screaming. I was trying to scream, but I couldn't. I was just, flapping my arms barely on top of above the water line. And I remember 2 of my students, Pramasha and Tilanka. They are very close. They are my friends, actually. And however much I bother them, however much I ask them to call me Azman, they wouldn't. Right? They're that decent. They are among the best students I've ever met in my life. On top of all of that, okay, the 2 of them came, and I remember Pramasha diving under because they tried to pull me. The stream was too fast. It was too fast, right? It was flowing too fast, and it was carrying me back. That day, if I had gone if the 2 of them were 1 second late, you probably wouldn't have ever heard from me. I remember Prama coming down, and he caught me, he held me, and he pushed me back, and Tila was pulling me. And he did it about 3 times until we were able to come out of that current that was flowing. And then they dragged me out, and I was coughing on water, but somehow I was conscious. Somehow, right, that day, a matter of a second, things would have changed. So not only just figuratively or a certain indirect impact, but literally, my students have saved my life. It's crazy. This is probably why I'm attached to the teaching profession and students this much. So this is one good example where literally my life was saved. Another, maybe one last example. This is a little, it has a sort of, I don't know, a philosophical nature to it also, the way I think of it. Now, humans have ego. No? Humans have ego. I too had ego. Right? But it was my teaching profession and it was my dealing with students that taught me a very, very important lesson about ego a very long time ago. Now in Sri Lanka, there's this general value system where now even today, to this date, even if I see a teacher, right, someone who has even taught me for a few hours, I go, I greet them, I respect them, I show my respect to them, and I address them, sir or madam. This is the value system that I was brought up with. This is the value system that my parents and my culture gave me. So when I started teaching at a very early age, right? So when I started teaching, I remember, for example, CIMA, SEC, I was teaching the early levels when I started, foundation levels. And there were students, right? So There were students when I was teaching, they were also maybe 1 or 2 years younger, and I taught them, and they do the session, and then they move on to the upper level. They move on, they keep moving forward. So I was teaching the first level, and I slowly graduated to the second level teaching. I remember there was a time period in my life, this is I think 2012, 2013, around that time, where students who I had taught, a few, not a lot, just a few students who I had taught in the foundation level had, reached the third level, and they had started working also, and they had, built a small corporate career, 1 year experience, 2 year experience. And then when they meet me, okay, they are very hesitant to, like, I have met individuals who don't even want to come and meet me. If they see me, they don't want to come and talk to me because they are afraid, or they don't want to come and call me sir. Okay. And a few incidents happened where, when I saw some of these students who were trying to evade me, I called them, I hugged them, I put my hand over their shoulder, and I speak to them, I talk to them, and I started realizing this slowly, that sometimes, especially because I think the mentality is, you go into the corporate sector and you meet a few peers and you mature, right, in a certain sense, let's say, and then you don't want to be seen sometimes calling, like, this has happened to me in dinners, right? You don't want to be seen in public calling someone who is as young looking as me sir. It's an ego problem. So I remember having to decide at an early age that the address, not the way I address my teachers, but sometimes my students are not going to address me sir, and I don't really have to bother about it. I had to, it was not easy because the value system I grew up was different. Okay, so for me, it was initially, it was a very alien thing, and I found it very difficult to understand it. I come from the, the Generation X era. So, and to be really honest, now today I work with PhD holders. I work with CEOs and managing directors and CFOs. And do you know that sometimes, now I insist, especially for those of them who are of my age or above, I insist that they call me Azman. Call me by name, sure, it's okay. But there have been individuals who literally have refused call me by name. They have said, no, you're a teacher, I will call you by sir. And I have said, no, please don't. Right? And they have become very close friends to me, very close colleagues in my life. I can remember a few names, like outright Hasanti Sandamali has refused. She's actually a senior person and she's very, very experienced. She has refused to call me by name. I don't know why. Tamara, I've literally told Tamara, please don't. And still he chooses, sometimes he chooses such courtesy. But see, that's how ego plays out, right? So how life-saving happened was because I had to deal with how people perceived me. And despite me being a teacher or a lecturer or a trainer, that you have to understand that all human beings are truly equal, and not everything is going to go based on the value system that you grew up. This realization hit me very early. And that realization down the line, in my corporate career, in my professional career, in my lecturing and training career, in my storytelling career, in my writing career, it has helped me so much. It has literally saved my life. Right? It has literally saved me from certain instances where, you encounter certain people. My ego, the way I look at my ego, the way I handle my ego, has helped me be normal, be calm and cool. And so that small incident, right, those few small incidents gave me so much of insight, made me think so hard and understand myself deeply, and come into contact with myself and ask myself the difficult questions, confront myself so much that I was able to handle some of the toughest situations later in my life because of those realizations. And so my students saved my life. These are just a few examples of how my students have saved my life. I'm sure that if you're a teacher who is watching this in some indirect way, maybe it's not direct, like how Pramasha and Tila saved my life, when I was drowning, not in that sense, but some indirect way, I'm sure that your teaching career, and if you've been teaching 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, purely because of the nature of this job, purely because of the nobility of this job, purely because of the connection this job, the real connection this job, this profession has with your students, with their parents, purely because of that, I believe that your life, if you're a teacher, has also been saved. Right? More than anything, the happiest thing for me as a teacher is that students remember us very fondly, and they remember us in their prayers. They remember us in their well wishes. Their parents remember us. Their parents wish us well. So those blessings, I think those blessings literally are the biggest gift that we can get as teachers. So why am I sharing this perspective with you is because this is like no other profession. And if you're someone who starting to teach, you have to understand that your responsibility is vast. You can't even begin to imagine the level of responsibility. One word, one wrong word in your class will change the entire course of your student's life. Right? One sentence that you say in your lecture, one sentence, especially if they are younger students, especially if you're molding them, right? One wrong sentence and that student's career, that student's entire life, I mean, it could decide whether that student becomes a criminal or a doctor. That is the level of responsibility that you have, that I have as teacher. That is why I say this. If we as teachers understand that students help us more than we think that we help them, that is the moment we will commit so much, and we truly understand how deep, how insightful, how personal, how intimate this job is. With that realization, your entire life will change. The way you look at teaching, the way you approach teaching will change. That is why I am sharing this. This is the perspective I carry with me every day. Even yesterday I had a session. I had my final strategic case study session. It was remarkable. I learned so much. I learned absolutely so much from that session. Right? I was the coach. I was the mentor. And I learned so much. Imagine that. You're blessed if you're a teacher. If you're aspiring to be a teacher, please do commit yourself genuinely to it. Reach out. Let me know if you have any questions. Drop a comment in the comment section. Tell me anything that you feel. Share with us your story. Share with us your story of how a student saved your life. Yes, students are truly, indeed, lifesavers. We as teachers are so fortunate. To my Allah, to my God, I thank Him so much for giving me this opportunity. And for giving me this opportunity to share this story with you. I thank Him. So thank you very much, ladies, gentlemen. I will see you around in the next episode, probably on the Art of Teaching series. Remember, students are lifesavers. God bless. Take care.